Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. As Sana said, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here today. As Sana said, I am a clinical speech language pathologist, but mostly focused on research these days. I have a small clinical practice. As you can see, I'm with a lot of very interesting different kind of faculties, computing science, medicine, kinesiology, sports and recreation. And I think that just speaks to the diversity of how I do what I do. To understand everything better. So we have to go here to push go. So, did we skip a
I
slide?
think so. Just go back one. There we go.
Everyone has to make that mistake once. So in terms of understanding and uplifting BIPOC voices, this is a quote by Ben Okri, who is a Nigerian-born British poet, novelist, and essayist. He says, "We live by stories. We also live in them. One way or another, we are living the stories planted, knowingly or unknowingly, in ourselves. We live stories that either give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live by, quite possibly we change our lives." And I really reflect on this very strongly when I'm doing the research I do into autism. I think many brilliant researchers have tried a lot of ways of understanding autism, and they've been doing so from a certain lens, which has led to the reporting of results in a certain way, which has led to an understanding of autism in a certain way, which has influenced future research and also how autistic people have been living their lives. So if we can really broaden the lens or bring a brand new lens to how we think about and understand autism and autistic processing, we can be really innovative in the ways that we can understand more and better. Oh, I forget where to, did it go?
Nope.
How about now? How about now?
You're changing your notes.
Okay, got it. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my story. I'm a research associate and I study social communication in autism, right? And that's a very broad term. I'm really interested in a lot of different aspects of social communication, including how we encode social and emotional information in the brain, all the way to how we use or convey social and emotional information when we're not even using words. I worked clinically for 13 years as a speech language pathologist before committing full-time to research. But recently, as I said, I took up clinical work again, focusing primarily on autistic teens and adults, trying to fill a need for people who are looking for different kinds of supports and services. I've done lots of research since 2010. I'm just going to talk about a very small part of that. Usually I'm working with autistic teens and adults who are verbally fluent. But recently I've been introduced to, and I've been working with two spellers in their early 20s, and we're also brainstorming what kinds of fantastic research we can be doing moving forward. I think a good descriptor for my work is multimodal. I use MRI. I use EEG, so I'm really interested in kind of more direct ways of looking at the brain and brain activity. I use motion capture, so how people move in space. I use eye gaze, so it's not quite the same as eye tracking, but eye gaze analysis, so we can see where people are looking when they're completing tasks. And I use good old-fashioned pen and paper tasks, right? And response time analyses to really get at all these invisible cognitive processes that lead to the behaviors that we see every day in anyone who's doing some processing. At all times, I'm just gathering any and as much information as I can gather to better understand how autistic people are processing. How are they processing social and emotional language? How are they processing social and emotional cues? And a key there is that they are processing these things. It's not, yeah, I'm really moving away from that deficit-based model. So as I said, I had been working clinically before I decided to come back and do research. I was really excited to understand how is the brain working in autism. Clinically, I was working with non-speaking kiddos and their families, and we were working together, gaining skills, and we were, developing some kind of verbal or speaking skills. And we were having loads of success, and a lot of the parents were saying, "Oh, you need to tell everyone what you're doing. And I wanted to understand, what am I doing? So I went back to do the research. Uh, Interestingly or notably, the first thing that happened when I got back to academia was I started reading a lot of research articles, as you do, and they were telling me loads and loads of things that autistic people can't do, which was really breaking my brain because they were telling me like autistic people don't understand metaphors. And I was like, actually, I work with loads of autistic people who do understand metaphors or are really into sci-fi literature, which is rich with metaphors, or, tell jokes all the time and laugh at my hilarious jokes all the time. So it's not about the fact that they don't. Certainly some things are more or less difficult at different times, but I was really confused by this kind of absolute, again, medical model where they were looking for what is quote unquote broken and how to quote unquote fix it. That did not fit with what I was saying. So I have worked really hard to shift towards a neurodiversity affirming framework, and I study a lot about disability justice, access, community, and belonging. And I really focus on how are autistic people processing. I think everybody in the world is processing things, and if we can understand how people are processing the way they are processing, that can give us a lot of good information to help people understand themselves better, as well as if they're seeking in supports to help those in helping professions be helping the right way, doing or supporting in the right way. So one of the things that I really focus on is working with autistic people. So for each one of my projects, I get funding for and in my ethics approval to work with autistic individuals. I hire an autistic advisory panel. I hire usually 3 autistic people, and I like to do 3 different autistic people for each panel, just so I'm getting the wide diversity of opinions from across different individuals with lived experience. One of my students and I, this is one of my master's students, we actually presented with 2 of our non-academic colleagues at the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research Conference, it's called, and we won the best talk at that conference. So my autistic advisory panel, they're paid, and what they say goes. So if they don't like something in my study, then we revamp why we're doing it or how we're doing it, or we leave it out altogether. And they also provide lots of good information of how we should keep going forward in some of the ways that we are already making those efforts. So I have 30 seconds to tell you about 5 amazing research studies that I'm working on. But maybe what I want to do is let you know that in each of my studies, what I'm doing is I'm going to a kind of skill that I have, classically in the research, it has been looked at like, how is this missing or how is this a deficit for autistic people? And I'm really shifting the lens and saying, okay, let's do this task. Everyone ignore that timer. Let's do this task and let's see how are autistic people processing during this task. That's what I look at. So one of the things I'm looking at is encoding social and emotional information in the brain and how it's attached to language. So because autistic people, there's research, the previous research had been building a narrative that they experience social and emotional interaction much differently during development, which would also then stand to reason that how they encode that information with the language that they're learning and using is different than for non-autistic people. So this is a description of how the task works, but basically what we were looking for is seeing, do autistic people encode social or emotional information about language at the word level? And we do that through a response time task, and I'm just going to show the autistic results. What you see here is if you will, the control kind of sentence is this blue bar, and I'm going to show you a green hashed bar. And what we were looking for to see if the green hashed bar is higher than the blue bar, then that was proof that autistic people are encoding social and emotional language information with their language at the word level. And what we found by working with the autistic people we were working with is that autistic people are encoding that kind of social emotional language or social emotional feeling at the word level. And I hope you have lots of questions and talk to me at the break, but I don't want to rip these guys off too much about the time that they are going to have. So that autistic people there, the key takeaway, autistic people strongly encode emotional information at the word level. I don't know why I'm always on the wrong slide. I'm also really interested in measuring empathy in autism. There's this narrative of an empathy deficit in autism, which is really bewildering to me. My favorite example is in one of my studies, a participant came up to me, an autistic participant, and he said, I know that you wanted me to say that, what was it, a willow, I think. I know that you wanted me to say a willow is a tree, but actually, so just so you know, a willow is a shrub. And I was like, okay. He goes, but don't worry, I said it was a tree because I know that's what you wanted. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks, chief. And then I had to go change my task. But just like, obviously, like they know, autistic people know what I'm thinking. Again, so this narrative deficit has really bothered me. There's a lot of research coming out of the state from Morton and Gernsbacher, who I highly recommend reading her work, shifting us away from that empathy deficit narrative. And then, as Amanda mentioned, talking about double empathy and what does that mean and why has it been such a problem in autism research until now. Anyway, so we were looking at a new way to measure empathy in autistic people that isn't about asking an autistic person, like, do you think you have empathy? Do you feel when other people feel, right? Like using language to try and get at this abstract task. Instead, we had people reading narratives that were meant to evoke a lot of feeling. And again, I'll try and fast forward through all of this. I'm so sorry, guys. Basically, what we were finding is that people who just read a story about nothing, just about something, you know, a walk in the park, for example, this is bias along the y-axis. And we were wondering if autistic people who had read an empathy evoking vignette, if empathy is something that autistic people are capable of, which spoiler alert, they are, then what we should see is that the blue bar, the people who read the empathy evoking vignette would have much less bias. And indeed, that's what we found. I want to note here that in this study, we asked people for the sex assigned at birth and their pronouns. And that's how we determine if they are male or female or non-binary is our other capture category. I encourage a lot more researchers to start thinking about it this way. We often still don't have a large enough sample of non-binary people that statistics can handle just yet, but it's a really brilliant new way to start increasing the diversity in your sample. So this is the report for autistic males, and there's a lot more information about females and the non-binary group too, but I'm not going to present those today. And then I'm going to just fast forward because I'm way over time. But I have lots of interesting stuff if you want to know. I'm running 2 studies right now that I'd love to have everyone's participation in. They're recruiting under a couple different emails, so please take pictures, or I'm just going to put my email up at the end and you'll be able to get to either study through me. So again, some sentence level processing for social and emotional content, as well as thinking about stigma in autism and thinking about nonverbal social communication clues. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm sorry I went way overboard. And please do get in touch, anyone and everyone who wants to talk about it. I could talk all day.